Well, today we've got a real treat for you as Charlie sits down with an ultimate one club man from my club. A man who was captain the day I first went to watch Luton Town live, and also a man who sits proudly in the top 10 appearance record holders for the football club. We hope you enjoy this one as much as we have. It is My Football Story with Marvin Johnson.
I'm delighted to say that Marvin joins us now. First of all, I want to publicly apologise to Marvin because we had all sorts of issues with my availability, time zones, and all sorts of that. But it's just been amazing to sort of catch up with you even before we started. So, but first of all, obviously, thanks for joining us in my evening, your afternoon, in that sense.
No, my pleasure, Charlie. Listen, I'm always happy to do podcasts. I mean, the reason I wouldn't be able to do it is if literally, like you said, I am a little bit busy. But listen, who's ever too busy? Like, to speak about obviously the love of the game, and so you'll always can find some time.
No, that's amazing of you, and yours is such an amazing football story to tell. So we'll always go back to the beginning, like we do, though. And just your first memory of football. So it could be playing, watching a game, just your first ever memory of the beautiful game.
We're going to go back a long time now. So some of your listeners will be going, hold on a minute, is he talking about the FA? So yeah, the FA Cup, funny enough, was my the first game which I remember watching. And it was 1977, Manchester United versus Liverpool. Man United beat Liverpool 2-1. At Wembley, and that was the very first I can remember the FA Cup final, which I sat down and watched. I mean, the year before, 76, I can't remember if it was at Southampton anyway, but that was the first really like FA Cup final I sat down and went to watch, and I became like a Liverpool supporter because I always wanted to support the underdogs, and at the time, Man United were a big powerhouse. Liverpool were a big club as well, but I felt, well, I'm going to support Liverpool. And that was my first memory, realistically, of like watching football, which is now readily available to everyone with Sky and everything else nowadays, nearly every day.
Yeah, I think people don't realise, do they, how not rare, but infrequent it was to have sort of football on the TV in that sense, and actually access to the game was just sort of more going to the ground, wasn't it? What we always sort of like to, especially with pros, is to find out, when you were at school, were you more of a late developer, or from an early age were you just significantly better than everyone else? Because obviously you've gone on to have a long career in the pro game. So how was that sort of journey for you in that sense?
No, that's a great question, Charlie. I mean, growing up, from a young age, I had a neighbour who ran a Sunday league team, and so it was natural that I was always playing out on the green, as they called it, with like his son and other members of the estate. And so I think like, whereas now that I don't know if that goes on a lot, but back then, you didn't have like PlayStations and Xboxes and all that stuff. You had some sort of computer, but like it was more about being outside and just like playing. And so growing up, I was playing with when I was like 7, 8 years old, I was probably playing with 11, 12-year-olds at the same time. And there's like just different groups of people. So, you're playing with a little bit older players. You're not just playing with players your own age. And so I think that helped me for my development. Like that, as I then transitioned to playing within my own age group, I managed to probably stand out as maybe one of the better players. I wouldn't say I was the best players, but I was more of the high end and in probably the top 3 of my Sunday league team, and which helped like in respect for me to going on to have a professional career.
So yeah, in terms of that, you obviously mentioned then about playing within your own age group. At what point did that become a sort of realistic career sort of for you in that pathway, or and also then talk us through that journey? Because obviously, as we've discussed, and everyone knows you for being at Luton your whole career, were there any other clubs you were at maybe before that, as a sort of in what we would now call the academy and things, or how would that work for you?
So once I can't remember now, probably maybe like 12, 13, I got to this stage where like I really was obsessed with the game. Literally, I just wanted to play every single day. And you start wanting to think about, what do you want to do when you get older? Yeah, I would love to be able to play professionally. And so I was that kid who was writing letters to different clubs, like all over the country, like not even like considering how I was going to get there, should they say yes? Do you know what I mean? You're writing to teams in Manchester, Newcastle, Liverpool, all these different clubs, Arsenal. I wrote to a lot of like clubs who are near. I grew up in Aylesbury, in Buckinghamshire, which is like not too far from London, probably about 30 minutes. So I mean, I wrote to so many clubs and I didn't get anything. And then I had a trial for Oxford United, and back then I was playing like a midfield position, left midfield sort of position, and so nothing came of that. But like again, I didn't get down in the dumps, and then my Sunday league team had a friendly against Luton team, and that was the time where like I got spotted with another lad, and we got invited to come over to Luton to train and practice for maybe the summer, I think it was, basically. And then after the summer, I mean, fortunate enough for me, I did well enough to get an extension, but my friend didn't.
That's amazing. I think it's just those sliding doors moments, I suppose. If you hadn't been that game, you know, who knows what would have happened career-wise, you know, in that sense. So just then, obviously now, you know, moving forward a little bit, it being, you know, it's become a career for you, and that as when you started at Luton. I just sort of would like to know, really, because you know that transition from maybe youth team football to then being in and around the first team, even before your debut, but just, you know, training with the first team. We always like to sort of find out what are those sort of differences, maybe both sort of from a footballing perspective, but also from like maybe you as a you know, maturity and all that sort of thing. So what are the sort of differences maybe going from that youth team football into the first team sort of setup?
I mean, again, there's a lot of big differences, Charlie, because back then, I mean, Luton were in what they're now the Premiership now. We're in the English First Division, which is the top division. And so even as a kid, when I was like 16 and I was at Luton and I knew I was coming to join the club as an apprentice back then, I was like coming over like and playing in reserve team games. So men's football against, like, for example, would have a game against Southampton at the Kenny, like 2:00 in the afternoon. And they'd be like the likes of Joe Jordan. I mean, a player who's played for Scotland, played for Leeds, played for Man United, and I'd be up as a 16-year-old playing against Joe Jordan. Obviously, I'm smiling still because I've got my teeth. All my teeth belong to myself, and that's what's probably more even accomplished for me, and that makes me happy because obviously to go not only a career to have your own teeth, but to play against Joe Jordans. If many people know who what sort of like a fierce opponent he is, you know, you'll be delighted to come for the game unscathed. So there's a lot of difference compared to what there is now, where like they have academy and they have under 21s, under 23s, and so I felt that back then you had to grow up really quick if you're going to be able to hold your own and play with like the likes of men. So the transition really was a good transition in the respect that, yes, I played for the youth team once I joined the club, but even before then I was exposed to like what I call real football with the likes of playing against in the reserve team, where you're playing with like fellow teammates who are probably maybe not in the first team and that had injuries and now trying to get themselves back fit, and then playing against like other players in a similar position to the players that were playing for our team.
I'm talking about then, sort of, just talk us through your first team debut and maybe the build up to it, the emotions, and then maybe the whole sort of experience, just like that first.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was a case where back then we had a fantastic team, and it was like the defensive partnership of Mal Donachie and Steve Foster. And Mal went on to have a fantastic career as Fozzie. And I mean, Fozzie played for England. So it was always going to be difficult for me to try and like force my way into the team. Like, I mean, both like internationals, like Mal played for Northern Ireland. And so it was a case where Mal had picked up an injury and I think he had injections. And it was a case where each week went by, the manager at the time, Ray Hartford, God bless him, was sort of like, had primed me and said, look, you know, you never know when your opportunity is going to come. I said, look, Mal's like struggling. So he had played on the Saturday, got through the game. And then I think the following week, it was a case where we were playing in a tournament called the Simod Cup back then. And so again, we took it seriously because but like it wasn't like the FA Cup or or like the League Cup back then. But I mean, we played that game, and so he said, look, you know, I'm going to rest Mal, and hopefully like for him to see if he can get fit for the Saturday game. And so I knew probably during that week that I was going to make my debut for the first team away at Goodison Park. And there's a few other players as well. I think Dave Oldfield, a lad called Paul Gray. So there was a few of us who were playing who he gave, like, because Luton is renowned for giving youngsters an opportunity. And so that was the game when I was very fortunate for me. I was like blessed to play alongside Forde, Steve Foster, the captain, and he helped me through the game. And I think we won 2-0 on the night. And I mean, we subsequently went to Wembley in the final that year. So, I mean, we had a good run in that. So that was fantastic because my parents drove up, I mean, all the way to Liverpool. I think it was on a Tuesday night. And so to play and make my first team debut and again to end up on the winning team and not concede a goal, it was a good start. But then let's fast forward to the Saturday now, and so Mal still wasn't fit, and now I make my league debut away to Wimbledon at Plough Lane to the Crazy Gang. And so again, John Fashanu and Vinnie Jones, and so it's like, you know, I was a confident lad, but I didn't think, oh, okay, this is easy sort of thing. You know, you're playing in, you know, one of the best leagues in the world, the first division, the top division. And so the game started, and I remember probably about 15, I don't know, maybe like 10 minutes into the game, I received the ball, and like I said, I like to try and come out with the ball at the back, and I remembered like sort of like breaking into the midfield, and again, I reacted a lot to obviously the situation, and so you make split-second decisions, and so I'd gone past one player, and then it's sort of like another player was literally in front of me. So I thought, can I just tow it round him to go around him? But obviously this is my first game, and the levels are much bigger than obviously playing in reserves and whatever. And so I lost the ball, and they've gone through and scored. And so literally we're 1-0 down after probably like 12, 13, 14 minutes, whatever it may be. I've made a mistake. And again, I wasn't one of those players who would crumble. The likes of like Steve Foster, Les Seeley, God bless him, in goal. They're very vocal, big characters. And so they didn't even, like, as I call it, cane me or like give it, because I think they obviously knew they got to get me through the game, whatever, for the rest of the game, and not to make another mistake. But I held it together, and I competed well with John Fashanu for the rest of the game. And we ended up losing, I think it was 2-0 in the end. But apart from the mistake, I felt I did pretty well. And I held my own, like, because it's very intimidating to like play against the Crazy Gang as a youngster. And you've got like Fashanu saying, like, from goal kicks, put it, like, it was point. Obviously they knew I was making my debut. They were going, put it on Youngblood's head, put it on his head, and I'll win it. You go, just put it on his head, sort of thing. And so but I was just in the zone and didn't really have any conversations with him.
Again, I think that test of resilience almost, isn't it? Like that sort of environment, and then who you're playing against. And you mentioned about sort of keeping your teeth, I suppose, playing against John Fashanu, and you mentioned earlier to survive, a full set of teeth as well. But yeah, I think it's something we don't necessarily see as fans, and it's fascinating to hear that insight. That the sort of the amount of resilience, I suppose, that you need to play at the top level of the game. But sort of speaking about that resilience, I suppose no career is a straight line, and actually those first few years at Luton, there was quite a lot of managerial changes and that kind of thing. How does that sort of work from your perspective as a player? Is it can it be quite unsettling? Or can it be like, oh, actually, as a new manager, maybe a new opportunity? Sort of a bit of an insight onto that. Those sort of more earlier years at Luton.
Yeah, Ray was like one of the managers who gave opportunities to youngsters, and he went on to have a fantastic like managerial career. Because obviously we won the Littlewoods Cup under him, and went on to Blackburn and managed with Sir Kenny Dalglish. And so it wasn't that bad at all, because like I said, Luton was renowned anyway for playing youngsters if they felt they were good enough. Kingsley Black was another one who I came through. Ray played him in the Littlewoods Cup final against Arsenal, and Kingsley was in man of the match. And so, even though there was a lot of like different managers throughout the year. Most of those managers, Charlie, coming in, had a certain way how they knew Luton wanted to play, sort of thing. And so, you know, you'd have players who were coming through the system. If they were good enough, they would get their opportunity. So it wasn't a case where, like, again, in today, I mean, even now, I don't think Rob Edwards would go out and splash a lot of money on a big player if he felt that he had a youngster who could come through. So, I mean, it fits the mold of what I think Luton has always been about, which is a community-based club, and they love to try and bring through their own.
I think it's an excellent point to sort of then go on to when you were saying about giving young players an opportunity. A bit further on in your career, you then become captain of Luton, I suppose, as well as obviously that whole sort of one club, you know, name tag, but actually being a formidable sort of captain as well. What's that experience like for you? And does that change you as a player a little bit? So I only ask as a, you know, even from grassroots football things, I suppose you're thinking about yourself as a player. When you're a captain, you maybe have to think a little bit more about other players and things. How does that work for you in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, back when I was captain, it was a case where, I mean, a lot of players had moved on. I mean, the club's always been like not exactly financially like stable with regards, obviously, money and stuff. And so if you had a good like youngster coming through, most of the time they would get sold. And so at the time when I took over the captaincy, I worked before then. I was alongside another captain, Steve Davis, who came from Burnley, then went back to Burnley. There was a fantastic captain and a fantastic player who I enjoyed playing with for a long, long time. So, I mean, I was probably one of the more like only 1 or 2, 3 senior players left there. So, I mean, Lenny Lawrence gave me the captaincy, and looking back now, again, like I said, it was a fantastic honor to be the captain and be recognized as a captain for Luton Town. But I felt that even before then, even when Steve was captain, I mean, you lead by example. And so when we had like a few good leaders, myself, Steve, Mitchell, and it was a case where even though I had the armband, it wasn't a case where it was any different to how I was approaching and trying to help others before that.
Yeah, I suppose there's that natural leader, isn't there, in that sense? Lenny Lawrence was, because I'm actually from Luton, so I would have been a school child at Luton when you were playing, and there was your school visit and things like that. And I do actually remember Lenny Lawrence coming in. From the outside, he seemed, you know, like a lovely sort of bloke. And I say that as like an 8-year-old. But what was he like as a manager? You know, obviously you spent a fair part of your career sort of playing under him in that.
Yeah, Lenny was, one of my favourite managers to play for, because again he knew. I mean, he knew, he'd been at Middlesbrough, been at Charlton, so he knew like the ins and out of the sort of the clubs and how to get them out of relegation, or how to manage with there wasn't a big amount of revenue, sort of thing. But like the best thing I would say was like he was very good at man management. He would like look after the likes of myself, Steve Davis, Mitchell, like more senior players. He knew the right time. He'll say, okay, like if we'd have played on a Tuesday and then we played on a Saturday, and then he'll say on the Monday, come in, like they wouldn't have Monday off. He said, come in, but like just go to the gym and go on the bike, just get your legs moving, sort of thing. And the rest of the squad, younger squad, would practice. And there wasn't a case of where it's like, oh, they've got a day off, or they're just like having a jolly up. It was a case where he knew to keep us like fresh and keep us hungry. He'll like say like on the Monday, say, look, just come in and just have a bike ride. And then he'd also involve you in maybe some of the decisions. Hey, look, thinking about if we're playing somewhere in Birmingham or whatever, like he goes, hey, what are your thoughts on maybe going up on the Friday, or what about going up on the day? So he'd always include you. I mean, he's one of those managers who, I mean, wouldn't say, look, this is what we're doing and that's the end of it. It'd always include and say, what's your thoughts on this and that sort of thing.
I think that's quite interesting, because nowadays that would be quite a common sort of approach. But I suppose there was a period in football where it was a bit more dictatorial, whereas I suppose it feels like you get a bit more buy-in if maybe people feel they're part of the decision a bit more, don't they? But this is probably one question you've been asked lots, because everyone, you know, talked to you about being a Luton player from the beginning of your career to the end of your career. And you don't have to give away too much, but were there any offers throughout that sort of periods from the beginning to the end? And were there any that you maybe considered, I might actually leave Luton to go somewhere else, or was it always really going to be a flat no in that sense?
I mean, no. I mean, from my knowledge, no. I mean, I don't know. But back then, I mean, right back then it's not as easy as it is like now, where probably like different clubs know of different players who might like say something to another player, say, oh, we're quite like that player. And you hear now sometimes it's during or after the game where a player, you know, they swap shirts and say, hey, look, manager quite likes you. That never really went on that much, I think, back in the day. And again, Luton being like a team which likes to bring through the youngsters, and I mean, I don't know whether or not. I mean, David Pleat was my manager when I first joined, and I mean, I enjoyed playing with him. But again, everyone knows that. I mean, the club would always probably try and look after their own, and there was a couple of occasions where I felt. I mean, I had done okay, done quite well, but not like I wasn't like killing it sort of thing. And I got offered a new contract mid-season. So I mean, in my head back now, I think I mean maybe, I don't know, was there maybe a chance where someone may have inquired about me, and the club sometimes felt, well, okay, let's offer him a longer contract, and then they do put a bid, and it's like we might get more money for him or whatever. I mean, but actually like getting spoken to and reached out by a manager, say, hey, so-and-so's coming for you.
No, okay, I appreciate you being so honest about that, actually, and it's I think it's a testament to you as a character in that sense as well. One thing we always like to sort of talk to pros about, just from a mindset perspective, and I think it's the only thing us as grassroots sort of footballers can relate to, is injuries. And just, you know, sort of, I suppose throughout a career you do well not to get a serious injury, but just how would you approach being injured, and how did you find the recovery in, you know?
A lot of people, if they say look back on my career, would say, oh yeah, he was injured a lot. But I wasn't really like out injured like for long periods of time. The only one long injury I had, Charlie, was when I ruptured my Achilles tendon. I was out for literally 9 months. Back in 91, 92, I think that was. And that was the only real like long-term injury where, I mean, even back then we had players who were doing ACLs, and I mean, they're what I call big, long-term injuries sort of thing. So I was very fortunate not to have those sort of injuries. I had a broken jaw, couple like hamstrings, and then medial like tears, but nothing really where like again like a broken leg or anything like that. I didn't have nothing like that, so I was very fortunate enough to go from my career and not have, which I call would be a really serious injury.
And then later on in your career, obviously, you know, Luton were then promoted sort of right towards the end, not long before you retired. After that promotion, what was it hard? Was it a hard decision for you to retire? And did you feel like it was sort of the right time, or was there that sort of element of, oh, we've just had success, and then I know it was a little while afterwards, but there's still that sort of buzz, I suppose. How did you approach retirement? Was it something that you'd sort of thought about prior to that, or was it something forced on you a little bit more?
Well, the interesting thing was that back then, the manager was Big Joe Kinnear, and Mick was his assistant, and it was a case where, I mean, I like Joe. I mean, there's a lot of people who probably felt like he was a little bit like, I mean, a bit harsh sometimes, too harsh on you. But like, I mean, that was the industry was in, and that's how it was in those days. And sometimes it's difficult for those sort of managers to change. But he called me into the office and just said to me, look, this is what you can do. He said, it's up to you. And like, he said, you can like, we're not going to give you another like contract, playing contract. He said, you can maybe go and like take an opportunity to go and look for options elsewhere. Or he said, like, you can come onto the staff, the coaching side of things, and get into the coaching side of things and be like an assistant academy manager to John Moore, who was then back then. And then he said, I'll still sign you as a player, register you as a player, just in case for emergencies or whatever for that year, because I was still quite fit, but I wouldn't be playing, but like most of the time. And then the transition would be, he said, look, you know, you'd eventually, when John retires, take over the youth team. And so again, it was a no-brainer, Charlie. I wasn't getting any younger. I had done my coaching badges and I'd done my B license. And it was a case where, it was a natural transition where I could get involved in coaching with someone of like Joe and Mick underneath me. It was a win-win, I felt.
Yeah, I think that's again another example, like you're saying about the club, and I think even now people see it, being in the Premier League and the whole journey, but just the heart and soul of the club is not, some other clubs can come across a bit clinical. I think that's another example there of just actually having genuine sort of care for the staff and things like that. I have to ask you though, I suppose it might have been the transition from being a player to a coach, but there was obviously the issues, manager idol, panorama. Feel free to talk about as much or as little as you want. And what was the sort of atmosphere in the club like at that point? Because obviously, even from the outside, there was all sorts going on, and the stories that were coming out in that sense.
Yeah, the guy, I can't remember his name. Was it Gurney? Or I can't remember.
Yeah, John Gurney.
Yeah. It was a farce. What he was trying to do, like with the club, and again, the good thing with the club is that they stuck together. We stick together as a club, but be it players, staff, supporters. And I can remember, I was working on the coaching side of them. So some of the players wasn't getting paid, some of the staff wasn't getting paid, and this man was coming in saying he's going to do big things with the club, but already now we were struggling to pay the wages sort of thing. And so I feel that the supporters got behind the club and didn't buy season tickets, refused to buy tickets and stuff like that for the club to put more money into the club so that this guy could maybe help himself to money and then obviously do a runner. Once there was no money in the club and no one was buying season tickets, it was a case where he didn't have much choice. I think the club was put into administration again, and someone came in and took over the club. And next thing you know, once he was pushed out, I think literally the next day there was literally, Charlie, queues down the road of Berry Park for people to buy their tickets to put money back into the club. And it just shows how powerful being a one club, one set mind, what you can do.
Part of being part of the youth sort of coaching that you have, and Luton has such an amazing reputation. I suppose from your perspective, you have players like Kevin Foley, Leon Barnett, who came through while you were there. Without giving away the sort of secret, what is it that made, because it's been for decades, Luton's been like that. Is there something about the culture? Is it about the mindset that just produced these outstanding players repeatedly, really? No matter what league the first team was in, it was always this sort of conveyor belt, wasn't there?
Yeah, everyone talks about, for me, when I was growing up, everyone talks about the away fans and where they come up and they're going through people's gardens. But right below there, underneath, you go down those steps, there was a little enclosed gym where you had we called it the volleys room, where it was a wall enclosed, and we had a net, and we had a head. We could play head tennis, or we could play volleys. And so every afternoon, or even in the morning before training, you could have loads of us queuing up to just go in there to try and be the best player, to stay in there, if it's 1v1s or 2v2s. And it was again, a lot of touches on the ball, technically stuff enclosed in a tight space, but at the same time you had these wooden alcoves, what you call it, with this wooden slats just stuck along these little alcoves. So the ball was sometimes bounce funny in between these little, even that wasn't natural. You'd still get it out because you could read the bounce and you could move your feet. And for me, I don't know what the secret is now, but it was just a case where back then you had this small enclosed dingy room which had 3 lights, and one of the lights didn't work and all that sort of thing. And again, we're talking back then when I was playing, it was the top division, top division. And so it was a case where there was no airs and graces, and there was no people who felt they were probably better than anyone else. Because we always mucked in, we all worked together, and it was a case where, like I said, you're very grounded, and I think if you're very grounded and very humble, you can go on and accomplish great things.
That's amazing. Isn't it? I think there's so much to be said for that. I mean, it's hard in the modern game now, particularly at the top end, to sort of maybe even understand what that would feel like to have, apprentices doing like you were just saying there. But it's a fascinating insight. I mean, you had some incredible players who some went on to be at the nationals, sort of under your coaching as well. I mean, obviously, is that sort of is that something you look almost with as much pride on as some of the things you achieved as a player in that sense?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, you mentioned Kevin Foley, Liam Barnett, Curtis Davis. I mean, there's Dean Brill, a goalkeeper. I mean, the list is endless, and so all those players who played internationally. I mean, like I said, Kevin played for Republic of Ireland many a time. He couldn't get him out of there. He loved it in there, and he's now back at the club now, working there with Rob. But you couldn't get him out of there, and you have to think about someone like him who was quite small for his age, and they talk about a lot now about playing players up. I mean, Kevin played down. He was that small. He played down. I mean, which you can't do now, obviously, because they see it as oh, he's an older player, but because of his size and to give him that confidence, he played down because he was very small. And then look, he went on and grew and had a fantastic career. So, I mean, there's all different methods and different ways of doing things. And like I said, I mean, Luton just has that affiliation of bringing players through, because I think it's very grounded. It's a very workman town where people again go to work, earn their money, and then the way I saw it, they come out now on the weekend, on a Saturday, after working 9 to 5, doing their job, and they're coming out and listen. Yes, you mean you're going to get some stick if you're not performing, both from the Luton fans, and rightly so, because like I said, they're paying customers. I mean, they can turn around and they can have a go at you, and you have to take that. I mean, that's how I felt it was. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, some people might, today think, oh, okay, what they haven't got me for? Okay, well, I'm having a bad game, so what? But that's not the attitude you want. I think they want a little bit roll your sleeves up, right, and get stuck in. I played at Luton for years, and we've lost games and we've got applauded off, because one thing what I know is that if you give 100% and you're going to fight and compete for every single ball, all right, they love that. They'll take that, and they're very, I think I call it, they're very honest supporters, shall I say.
I think that's even been seen this year in the Premier League. But just quickly, you're still probably reaping the benefits of it. I was reading today that Curtis Davis that you might be playing for Sierra Leone or something like that. So
I know, I saw that yesterday. You
can add to the list, isn't it?
At the age of 38, I know. I mean, it's great. Curtis is one of those players who would always give 100%, and he would always play to as long as possible. I mean, he was one of them. He loves the game. He loves the game, and he would always play as long as possible. So I saw that yesterday, and I thought, oh well, good on you. Fair play to you.
My next sort of questions really are more about what's happening now. So it's just sort of bring us up to date. Obviously, we can see you're in your office at work and, in your tracksuit and things. So just tell us, what are you doing now? And maybe that journey from leaving Luton to where you are now from a football perspective in that sense.
Yes. So when I always loved being involved in the game. And so when I left Luton, it was a case where I ended up, you have to do what you need to do to pay the bills. And so I ended up getting a job in London, working in the office, working for a company. And it was it wasn't me. 9 to 5. And, but at the same time, I had to pay the bills sort of thing. And so if I got the opportunity to go back into the game, I thought that's what I want to do. I had my B license, my A license, and my experience of playing. And so that was something which I was really looking to get into coaching again. And so one of my ex-colleagues, Carl Griffiths, who played for us towards the end of the career, and he was coming over to America to do camps and worked in the summers. And he said to me, look, if you want to try and come abroad, he goes, look, I know this guy who I go and coach for in the summers. He's looking for maybe to bring someone across full-time permanently to work. And so he brought me and connected me with a guy called Terry Foley who ran a club over here. And Terry's an English guy, but he was coming back to England and for Christmas time, and we arranged to meet up. And I went to London and met Terry, and he said, look, if you're interested, this is like sometime in September 2010, maybe, I think it might have been. And so he said, look, if you're interested, I'll pay for your flight. Come over at Christmas. We've got a showcase tournament for the teams, and you can come across and we'll go from there. So yeah, he flew me over, and I was here for 2 weeks, and went to the showcase in Florida as well, which was great because obviously it was winter time and it's a bit of sun, but not as cold as it is normally in the winter. And so I had a fantastic time. Worked with girls, coaching girls for the first time ever in my career, and I mean, was like blown away. I mean, because it was the first time I had worked with girls, that how good technically these girls were when I first come over here. So I mean, really enjoyed that. And when I went back, he said, "Look, okay, if you want me to try and like get you over permanently, we'll put everything into action." So that's what they did. I mean, applied for a visa for me, and basically the rest is history. Yeah, I came across here, and I've been here ever since.
Is there, without it making like the obvious difference of it being a different country, is there a different sort of approach to football or soccer, I suppose, compared to obviously, you know, in this country and particularly this part of the country as well, compared to where obviously you are now? Is it a sort of cultural difference in terms of the actual game?
Yeah, I mean the success of the Lionesses. I mean, yes. The female game over in England has caught up massively with regards, obviously, over here with the females in America, because obviously, I mean, won the World Cup numerous of times on the women's front, and so there is a big difference, because I found out when I first come here that everything in their sports involved like going to university. So if you was good at basketball, NFL football, lacrosse, whatever it may be, these showcases, what they went to, different college coaches would go to these showcases and scout kids and say, look, we really like you, and would you be interested in coming to our school? And so, I mean, it's a little bit weird. I mean, these families still pay a lot of money for us to coach their kids, and then yes, they get like what they call, if they're really good at it, a 3 or 4 year free ride, where the school said, look, we'll give you one of our positions we can fill with you to come and play for our school. But you know, you've paid a lot of money to get there because of the tournaments, what we do, and the fees, what they pay yearly. But every sport's like that over here, and I get that and understand that. So it's a little bit different. I mean, compared to like now, if I was growing up here as a young like 16-year-old obsessed with the game, I mean, probably my parents being American would be going, well, look, this is what we want you to do. We want you to go to college. We want you to go to college for 4 years, get your education, and then you can start thinking about football, soccer, as they call it over here. Whereas, I mean, I was just football mad. And so it was a case where, yes, obviously, you know, you have to think about education and stuff like that. But I mean, at the age of 16, if someone said to me, look, you got an opportunity to go to become a professional player, and my parents would say to me, well, look, you know, you got to go to college for the first 4 years. But I said, I'm leaving home. I'll be like going to play football. I'll look after myself. I'll fend for myself. That's just how the mindset would be. But over here, I get it. It's that education, and not being negative. Their sport, the game, is not as big as it is in England or most of Europe. You know what I mean? They have a cap on their wages for the MLS and stuff like that. So I get that as well at the same time. So there is a big difference in respect of how the game is like associated with regards players, supporters. But I mean, it's growing, it's getting better, Charlie. I mean, the World Cup's coming here, so that's going to be huge. I mean, for the country as well.
I just wanted to sort of touch really on, you know, obviously everyone knows you as a player and the coach, but also as a podcaster now. So, you know, just tell us about your pod, how it works, sort of where it began, because it's absolutely fascinating. I've listened to loads and loads, and maybe because I'm from Luton, I'm maybe a bit more familiar with, you know, the journey of some of the players that you had on there. But there's some incredible stories, isn't there, the players that you spoke to? Yeah,
I mean, it happened when COVID was in its height, sort of thing, and everyone was like stuck at home, sort of thing. And I got an email from my current co-host Andrew, who back then had his other podcast. He lives in Australia, grew up in Luton, big Luton fan. So emigrated to Australia, got married, and got kids out there now. And so he had this podcast. It's Not Called Soccer. And so he reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you come onto our podcast?" And I said, "Yeah, of course, no problems." And so went onto their podcast, and he interviewed me similar to what you're doing now. And it was a case where, I mean, we were just chatting afterwards, and I just said, "Oh, I'm surprised." I mean, because of like COVID, and I said, "No players are doing their own one." I mean, it's exploded now, the podcast industry of people doing them. But he goes, "Oh, why didn't you do one, Marv?" And I said, "No, I mean, I wouldn't know where to start." I said, "I mean, it would be too complicated for me and everything what I'm doing. I don't know if I'd have the time," sort of thing. And he said, "Oh, look, I can record it." He said, "Look, if you like with your connections get the guests, then we can go from there." And so we brainstormed, and I mean, we spoke back and forth, and I said, "Look, I mean, for me, I always try and put myself in the position of the guests who we might be having. And, you know, yes, there's players who I knew I played with who I felt that I'd be quite confident I'd be getting on. But like, I felt the whole format would have to be something which is quite structured and quite simple, because again, I mean, not a lot of players sometimes want to be in front of a camera, want to talk, and again, sometimes get a little bit nervous and tongue-tied and don't know what they're going to speak about, and there's going to be like long pauses and things. So I said, well, why don't we just like make it really simple and go like, we talk about their best ever 11 they played with, because it's in their control then. Basically, like we have a conversation, or I have a conversation with them, and I'll say, "Look, hey, when you come onto the podcast, this is how it works. You talk about your best 11, start from the goalkeeper through to the striker." And we felt, don't say the name. It'd be nice to obviously have that concept where like me, Andrew and myself have a little bit of a competition trying to guess who they're talking about by giving us clues, and also the listeners. We felt like if you're like on the tube, if you're in your car driving, it then helps you to think, oh, who, especially if you're a hardcore Luton fan, and we have like a lot of the Luton players on, it's like, oh, he's talking about so-and-so there, or he's talking about so-and-so. So it helped engage the audience as well. So, and there was no, for me, I feel that with regard to players, there would be no like curveball, or like if you just left it open, it'd be like, oh, what if he asked me about this, about my career? If it's just like a blank like conversation, you're just talking about someone's career. At least with this, it was set, and it was like going to be all about like their best 11, and there was going to be no like, oh, what about the time when obviously you, I don't know, just got caught like drink driving or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Something like that. It's not just like a blank conversation. We just had a section where we knew it would be a case where I wanted the players to be comfortable, that they would be speaking about obviously mainly the playing side of things. But we found that a lot of that, players like enjoyed it so much that different things, memories came back to them. They spoke about different stories about different players, different managers, and so that was in their control if they wanted to talk about a manager which they didn't get on with. I mean, well, what about that time when you was at this club? Yeah. So they would talk about it, and they would feel, if they felt comfortable enough, they would bring it out rather than us trying to set someone up, so to speak. I don't think any players who play with me would think I would do that, but you still want them to have that comfortable or that confidence that they're coming onto a show where there's going to be no controversy.
Yeah, and do you know what? I think it is that, there's so many different ways of content out there now, but that was such a unique, particularly the point it came out. There was nothing else like that. And that's, as much as me knowing some of the players, just the whole concept of it was brilliant. And actually, one of my favourite ones was Tony Forde, who we ended up speaking to. And he's quite open, actually, I thought, considering.
Yes, he is.
There were some things that he could have well avoided if he wanted to, because, his story and things like that. But yeah, I was just going to add to that, really. I mean, we've been doing this 6 or 7 years, and it's usually the season, and I still don't know what I'm doing. So, it is. It's
great. I mean, like I said, I've been on a couple like with like Luton supporters and some non-Luton supporters where they've invited me on the podcast, and I like I said, I enjoy it. I mean, I think it's great because, I mean, it reminds people like still who like maybe a little bit on the younger side that I did play, and I get to talk about my career. But at the same time, like I said, I enjoy sitting down and talking.
Well, I just wanted to just to sort of finish off with, we normally finish with some quick fire questions, but I just wanted to sort of do a public thanks, because actually, without realising it, our paths crossed once a couple of years ago, where my school football team got to Wembley, and through Baker Others, you sent a brilliant good luck message. So
that's right, yeah.
School team played a school we represent Sheffield United, and we represented Luton, because we run a national competition. So I just wanted to, it's the only, because I didn't obviously have a contact for you, and so I've tried to get hold of some of the people, because it was such an amazing experience, and those messages that you guys sent were just, it was such a wonderful.
No, that I remember. I mean, because Facebook on our podcast, and then she reached out, and it was great. I mean, any time and anything I could do. I mean, I love to help out in any way.
Yeah. So as a teacher of those children, I just wanted to say sort of publicly thanks for that. But you've probably been asked a lot of these questions before, but it's just fascinating to hear sort of some quick fire answers, really. So throughout your whole career, you can choose from here in that sense. So what's your favourite ground outside of Kenilworth Road that you've played at?
Well, it has to be Anfield. I mean,
right.
Liverpool, because of being a Liverpool supporter, growing up as a kid and being a big supporter of them, and basically going as a 15, 16-year-old, having the likes of Sir Kenny Dalglish on my bedroom wall, because I'm a big Liverpool fan. Fast forward now to '88, when they got to the FA Cup final, they played Wimbledon. I was played against Liverpool, and Sir Kenny was manager, and I got to he obviously didn't have a lot of subs in those days, so he was obviously resting players for the FA Cup final the following weekend, and so he brought himself on against us, and so to get to play against your hero, right? I mean, 2 years earlier, I was looking at him on my bedroom wall, and then next thing now I'm at Anfield, right? Which was fantastic. It was like a carpet to play on it. I mean, and to be actually there and have your idol there in front of you marking him was probably the best moment in what I can think of.
That's amazing. I love those sort of stories. That's incredible. This is a bit of an odd one. We sort of like to ask this because I'm a bit of a sort of boot fan. So across your career, did you have a favourite pair of boots? And we're not, in terms of maybe the ones that lasted you for 3 or 4 years, or one, what was your favourite pair of boots?
I've been I was a big fan of the World Cup '82. Right? They had Adidas stripes down, but they were a studded boot, and they were called World Cup '82. And then they brought out a molded version, which was called the Copa Mundial, yes. Which was it was just a beautiful boot where it just felt like a slipper and comfy on, and I know to the extent that some players over the years, I think Graham Alexander was one. He took out the molds, and put in metal studs so they were that comfortable in the actual boot. So I'll probably say the Adidas boot World Cup '82 and the Copa Mundial. But as a kid, going way back, Charlie, I had Dalglish Gold,
right.
Puma, Dalglish Gold. I think if only I had those boots now, it's mad. Literally, this is when I was 14, 15. I had these boots because I was, like I said, a big Sir Kenny fan, and I had these Puma boots, and they're the gold stripe, and they're called Dalglish Gold sort of thing.
They'd be worth a fortune now, Marvin. It's just something to hold on to, isn't it? In that sense,
I know.
So just the last couple, really. I know you've probably been asked this tons by people, but the best player you played with and the best player you've played against in your career.
Best player I played with. There's so many, but if you're gonna just get that person who's gonna be just at the top of it. Just to mention a few. There's Steve Foster, great, fantastic defender. Mick Hartford. David Priest, God bless him, the midfielder who was like a genie on the ball. Brian Steen, but for me, it would probably have to be Ricky Hill. Ricky was like I said, amazing. He could do everything. He could head, he could tackle, he could do tricks, he could play a pass, he could score. So just to be able to say, look, I played with Ricky Hill, who a lot of people know that what a player he was, and that for me, and the experience in that, and how much and he helped me a lot when I was obviously first got into the team, growing, trying to be able to establish myself. And so I'd play Ricky Hill, played with. played against, the toughest opponent, I mean, as a centre back, I probably would say Mark Hughes. Mark Hughes, who played for Manchester United at the time, and we were playing Man United, and Mark Hughes was like, I mean, he went on to play for Barcelona, so you know he went on to play for Chelsea. I mean, he had a fantastic career. So Mark Hughes was very strong, right? Was a great, like, had great technique, had a great touch, and so you know he was always going to be in a battle with someone like him. And again, he wasn't the biggest, but again, he could head the ball, and so to play against someone like Mark Hughes and like do not bad. I mean, yeah, he's probably the toughest player to play against.
Just really quickly, like I spoke to Alan West a few weeks ago, actually, who was obviously at Luton, but long before you were there. But he crossed over with Ricky Hill in the same way you did, and he said the same about Ricky. It was fascinating, really, that you know the how the appreciation for him in that sense.
Right.
You don't be saying two different generations of players. Like Alan, you still say that he was the best player they played with. But the last question we always ask every guest is their favourite game, and obviously as a professional, we can give you two. So your favourite game that you ever played in. And then your favourite game just as a fan. So, you know, it could be you went to the ground or even watched it on TV. So favourite game as a player and as a fan.
Let's start off with the fan one. I didn't actually go to obviously the playoff final. I mean, I was tinkering about obviously coming back for it and stuff like that. But I am a big Luton fan. I'm a real big Luton fan. Even though I played for the club, I'm a big Luton fan. And for me, it would. I mean, I'm glad. I mean, I'd rather like not go and they get promoted like they did, Charlie. But to come there and like, if they didn't get through, I would be so mortified. I'd be like upset. I mean, I don't think I would be able to deal with it. Whereas not being there, and if they didn't get through against Coventry, be here, I could deal with it a little bit better, sort of thing. If that makes sense.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
So, that I didn't, but the game that I went to, which I enjoyed the most, was when they won the St John's Trophy.
Oh yes,
Scunthorpe, that at Wembley. That for me, I mean, I went to the game, and then we know about the season because we got relegated and like points deducted, and still then you know you've got that thing where as a club, Luton still got a positive out of it. Do you know what I mean? The FA doctors those points, those 30-odd points, and I mean, it was a miracle that Mick could ever trying to keep us up. But like at the end of the day, we still got something out of it, and which was the St John's Trophy, and to go to Wembley against like Scunthorpe, who were the favourites, and they were higher division, and to come up and win that game was probably a fantastic experience because being at Wembley.
I think Luton's one of the few clubs that would actually be able to do that. I think, you know, in that sense, I'd go for everything and still come out with that. I think that's that thing that we spoke about earlier. And then your favourite game as a player?
Favourite game as a player, I mean, there's been a few games. I mean,
you did amass a lot of games, so if it's hard.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I was young. I mean, as an 18-year-old to go to like Anfield, Liverpool, and win as well. We won there. That's rare. Even in today's game, no, anyone to go to Anfield to win. But like, I mean, the whole enjoyment of a game probably would be. We played Ipswich in a Rumbelows or League Cup or whatever. I can't remember what it's called. And back then it was a two-legged affair where you went to like one ground, and then whoever got drawn home, you had to go to the other ground. Yeah. It was a two-legged thing. And so we played Ipswich, and Ipswich were a league above us, and we went to Ipswich, and I think we ended up losing 2-1 in the first leg, and then in the home leg, it was like back and forth because we ended up like literally going through. Steve Davis scores a goal, a headed goal, and we're going through. Then he scores an own goal, and then it goes to extra time, and then and the end of extra time, there's a minute to go, and I score with a header where Richard Wright, I think, who was at Arsenal, the goalkeeper, came out and sort of like flapped at the ball, and I sort of like in the last minute of extra time headed it back towards just directly back to the goal, and the stadium, Kenilworth Road, as you know, rocks, and it was like literally just, I have chills now going down my neck and my spine as I talk about it now, because it just like feels like I'm still there. And so that for me to play against, I mean, you know, Kieran Dyer, you had like some top players who were playing at Ipswich at the time, and some of them who were like former internationals, and we were in a division below them, and to play over like 2 hours, like including extra time of football, and to come out on top at home, and like I said, that probably was the best game I've played in.
Well, that sort of that's probably the best way to finish, I think, of any of the ones that we've done of this. Like, it's such a personable sort of game to finish on. So, you know, Marvin, it goes without saying that this has been one of my favourite interviews, and honestly, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. So
I appreciate it, and thank you for having me on.